Okay, just been thinking I'd want to wanted to make a video about this watch. Well, not specifically everything about this, but mainly the uh, the bezel here. Um, yeah, this is the Longines Weems Pilot Watch. It is a Japan limited edition reissue of the Weems Pilot watches that they used to have back in World War II. Um, Besides Longines, Omega, Zenith, Movado, and I believe JLC were other brands that were also making very similar watches. There was a brief, basically, on with some specs that the British Ministry of Defense wanted to have made. A particular watch made with certain specs, and I'm not going to get into all that, but one of them was, at least at the time, having a timing bezel, a second-setting bezel, so that they can synchronize their watches to a known signal or timing signal, and so that way everyone's on board, and missions and things could be carried out all in with as much precision as possible. And so when someone first looks at this watch, they may think that, oh, this is like a timing bezel, like on a dive watch, like for instance on my Seiko here or any other standard uh, dive watch. And you probably could use it in that fashion. The scale goes from, this is a locking crown for that bezel, and it's bidirectional and it's friction fit. And you could do that, and actually this is called a second setting bezel. And so basically you set the seconds to the top of the minute, to find that the start of the minute zeroed out for watches such as this back then that did not have the ability to hack. Many of them did not, at least during this time. And so the way to get around that was to use the bezel to kind of offset or reset, I guess, the actual start of the minute, where the beginning of the minute, which would be 60, or I guess actually it would be 00, right at the same spot. Would say if it was up here, this is where it would begin at. But, with no hacking, you can't really precisely determine that, depending on number of wines, because here we go. So I just wanted to just demonstrate how one might use and set such a watch, because it's manual wine only. And so we get this started. And, if you knew exactly how many wines it took to actually start to get the hands going, you might be able to synchronize it with something, but that's a lot of wasted time and you probably won't get it exact. So I'm going to start this puppy up. And by the way, I have this on I believe this is a Fluco cuff, leather cuff band. It's not exactly a bun strap, but it kind of serves a similar purpose. So you get it started. Probably will wind it all the way or as much as possible. And of course, it's being manual one, you'll find a spot where it will stop. But when I don't have to go all the way there. So if you were to set this to a known time signal, at least for me right now, it would basically mean going with something like this is what I usually use to set my watches when they haven't been running for a while. So that helps, hearing that the tone. It starts off at the start of the last 5 seconds, so you actually hear 6 tones. So, like say, I know I gotta charge my phone, but I just want to finish this video first. So, so start at the last 5 seconds. So go ahead, 1 at the start. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the sixth one will be right at the start. So it tells you, you know, you would take 5 seconds, why not 5 beeps? Well, it tells you at the start of the 5 seconds, and then you count from there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So trying to keep an eye on both things at the same time is hard. So what I would do is just start rotating the bezel and get it and let go when I hear that beep. And that should be, you know, I try to rotate the bezel as I was showing you to follow the seconds hand, and then as I'm listening to the beep, once it hits the last mark, then I would let go, and that should designate that as the start of the minute, right? The top of the 0 seconds. So I tried to show you that again. So say it's coming up. It should be right down here. So you want to set the beginning. Try to rotate it and follow it as closely as possible. Sometimes I can see both at the same time. It's going to go pretty soon. 2, 3, right about there. So the top of the minute, or 0, when the 0 seconds are at, it's right around, I guess, technically that would be 21 minutes or 21 seconds really. And so just to verify, I'm going to just let this go around and see if it actually hits that mark right there. I think my parallax might be showing it as being a little bit off, but from my angle, this is a straight line to this. Sometimes it might actually fall somewhere in between, but that's the beauty of being able to rotate this freely. It doesn't have to click into a specific spot. You just set it exactly where it should be. So you should hear it start to go off right about here. 2, right about there. That sounds right. And since this doesn't hack, you just pull it out to the time settings position. There's no date. These watches never had dates. And so what I could do is, you know, right now it's 11:07, so it's going to go up to 11:08, right? So, and right now this is about halfway, 30 seconds, right? So, I mean, if I had it close, I would have done it right at 7.5, right about there. But since it's a little bit, I already passed it, you know, a couple of seconds ago, it's probably not right, but I'll just look at how it's moving, because it's still moving as soon as I let go. And it's probably there. So now it's exactly should be. You get a feel for what I said, because where you, like if I were to just wait to that hit the top of the seconds, it may not start moving until a little bit after it's, you know, you stop moving, messing with the crown. So sometimes I think that you might want to just ever so slightly advance it just a hair just beyond, so that it compensates for when you stop fiddling with the crown, then the hands will actually start moving, and then it should be perfectly in sync. So if you look at this now, right, almost there, not quite lined up yet, but it should be pointing exactly to it right at the top. Yep, pretty much there. And that's it. And then you just put that down, and then of course lock the crown down so you don't accidentally shift this, but it's pretty good friction on it, so it won't move that easily. But that's why the second crown's there. So lock this down, your watch is set. Now you're perfectly synchronized with whatever, uh, true timing or radio signal or whatever that you're going off of, which, if you're in the military or fighter squadron or bombing squadron, whatever it is, everybody would be synced up to the same way, just like this. And this is how you would do it with this, what they call the second-setting bezel, and was made by, I believe, is it Lieutenant Colonel Weems. He was actually part of the United States Air Force, if I'm not mistaken. And see, this patent here is actually for this second-setting bezel. That's what that number down here is for. If you see that, you're curious what that is. That's all about this bezel, actually. And so they had this. These were the early pilot watches of the British RAF, and some of the United States Air Force used similar style watches. And there's been several variations on the designs, much like the Dirty Dozen watches. There's a brief on what they basically needed the specs to be on the watch that they wanted for, the soldiers, whatever. And those 12 different brands, they came up with their own ways of producing it, but they all had the general look, but there are all these little details and variations between those Dirty Dozen watches. And I believe throughout the years that they were producing them, they didn't always follow the exact same parts. I'm sure over time some things maybe weren't as available as they were when they started making certain watches, and so they had to just substitute certain parts. And so for whatever reason, some of the design elements, handsets, the way the dial might look like, would change. I'm talking about the Dirty Dozen, but there's so many, I think, variations on the Weems style pilot watches too. I mean, Longines had this style, they had loom eventually at some point. The crowns were at 2 o'clock, and sometimes they didn't have crowns. There's all sorts of different, ways but this is the general, look. And this is one of the ones that they used to make. This is actually something that they reproduce pretty faithfully. That's why it's so small. It's just 33 millimeters. Yes, a pilot watch is actually under 40 millimeters, let alone even 36 millimeters. 33, and that was the larger size too. I think they originally started off with 27 millimeters. And anyways, so this is important to help keep, obviously, everybody on board and synchronized. And if you're doing, especially with navigation, it's very time dependent. And they used an example, I think, when I was reading about, why this is so important. Like if you would be doing, say, especially like a bombing run, you got a certain place you need to be at your target at a certain time. And so, being off by a couple of seconds could make a big difference by a couple yards, a couple kilometers, maybe even a couple miles, bombs being off target. It really depends on, the flight conditions, weather, and so forth, right? But, seconds matter when you're dropping like from several miles high down to a specific target down below, wind, velocity, altitude, and anything else that might happen. Precision is very important. But anyways, later on, as the war progressed and technology allowed for the watches to actually have hacking seconds, this second-setting bezel basically became obsolete. So you'll find that they stopped using them. They lost this in favor of just a smooth bezel, and obviously you won't need the second crown. And then it's very much simplified. And I'm just using Longines as an example, but I definitely believe Omega also has a similar model where you see them with the spade hands and a simple off-white or off-white dial, blued hands, Arabic numerals, generally not loomed, the hands or the dial. Maybe later on they started to use it, but anyways, it's very simplified, and they actually were able to enlarge the watch a bit larger too, to I think 35 or 36 millimeters. But I personally like the style, I don't want to say original, but the early pilot watches that they first, spec'd out and made. I like the look of this second setting bezel. I find that without that, it's nice, but you know, I always found that and like really simple field watches a little bit too plain for my own taste. And so I like the fact that you have this extra detail here and the second crown, and it just makes it looks cool, looks look more tooly. So that's about it. I just wanted to demonstrate how you would use and set such a feature on such a watch. Thanks for watching. Enjoy watches.